how to thread your domestic serger for a 4-thread overlock. Most domestic sergers are threaded in this sequence, but double check your manual just to make sure that it's the same sequence as I'm going to show you here. So we're always going to start with threading the upper looper, which is this one. Then we go to the lower looper, which is on the very right, and then the right needle, and then the left needle. So the first step that you're going to do is set all your tension dials to 0. So these are your tension dials here. By setting them to 0, it's going to make it easier to thread and make sure that your tension isn't going to screw up how you thread your machine. So the next step you're going to do is thread your cones, your thread cones, through your top thread guide here. So you can see I've threaded 3. I'm just going to thread the last one there for you to see. So now we can move on to threading through these thread guides. I'm going to open up my plate here, and since we're starting with the upper looper, I'm going to grab the thread, put it through this thread guide here, through the tension disc and dial, and then through the lower thread guide. This is your tension dial. And when you thread through the tension dial, you want to really just floss it in there to make sure that it actually stays in there. Now I'm going to show you how to thread the more complicated portion of your serger. So you can see that I have a bunch of spots here where thread is supposed to go. And you can see that some of these dots are pink and some of them are yellow. So the pink dot corresponds with the pink dial on my machine, and that happens to be my upper looper. So I'm going to thread my upper looper thread into each spot where the pink thread indicates that it's supposed to go. So you just start by clicking everything into place, and this thread goes behind and underneath that small portion, and then this is your upper looper right here. So it's like an arm with a thread hole at the end. And then after you've clicked everything into place, you just thread your thread into the small thread hole. Now I'm going to lift up my presser foot and push my thread to the back and to the side. That's going to help keep it out of the way. Next I'm going to thread my lower looper, and I go through the thread guide, tension disc, and the lower thread guide. And then I'm going to start clicking it into place here. So my lower looper is kind of hidden right now because I gave so much space for my upper looper. So I'm just going to turn my dial towards me, and you never want to turn your dial away from you, always towards you. And not every machine is going to have this function, but my machine is only about 10 years old, so I have this really great function here. It's actually a little lever that I pull, and you might be able to see here if I zoom in. So this is the lever that I pulled. It's kind of hidden, but your thread is supposed to go behind your end of your lower looper and then go through the other end. So this is your lower looper. Again, it's another arm with a thread hole here, and the thread needs to click in to some unknown part here behind the lower looper. So my machine has that lever that I just pulled, and you can see a small thread spot clicks into place. So I'm just going to click my thread in there and then click it back and thread my lower looper. So I also like to clip the ends of my thread with a small pair of thread snips. It really helps keep the ends nice and sharp so you can thread a little bit easier. And tweezers are also your best friend when it comes to threading your serger because it helps you get into these tight little spaces. There we go. Okay, so I'm pulling my thread through, and I'm going to turn my dial so that I have a little bit more space to put my thread for my lower looper. So I've turned it so that I kind of have a spot there to comfortably put my thread through, and I just put it underneath the presser foot and to the side again. So now I'm going to show you how to thread the needles. So now that I've threaded the upper looper and the lower looper, I'm going to close my plate because I don't need to have that open anymore. And I've raised my needles to the highest position. You can see the upper looper is kind of in the way there. So I'm going to see if there's a different position where the upper looper is kind of hidden. Now I'm going to put my thread through the upper thread guide and the tension disc and the lower thread guide. And then there's a few extra spots for the thread to go as well. So it goes through this thread guide, this one, and this one, and then finally into the needle. So the more thread guides that your thread has to go through, the better it's going to keep the tension. So even though it seems like a lot of steps, you actually want to keep it, the more steps the better. So again, I'm just going to snip my thread with my handy little thread snips and use my tweezers to get it through the eye of the needle. And then just grab your thread and put it with the rest of the threads there to the back and to the side of the presser foot. Now I'm going to thread my last needle, and again through the upper tension guide, the tension disc, and then the lower thread guides here. And I'm going to clip my thread to give it that nice sharp end and feed it through the needle. So the cool thing about these tweezers is that they're kind of like a reverse tweezer. And I really like them for threading my machine because normally with other tweezers you squeeze to give the tension, but these tweezers, oh, my presser foot came off here. There we go. So that's how to put your presser foot on. You just lower it back onto the foot. So just saying, these tweezers, you actually squeeze to open them. So that's a really nice feature to have. Okay, so now that I've threaded my machine, I'm going to double check that I've actually threaded it correctly. So I put the presser foot down, then I turn on my machine, and I'm going to give it a few chain stitches here. So you can see that I've got this really nice chain here. That indicates that I've actually threaded the machine correctly. So now I can go ahead and adjust my tension according to my fabric and start serging on my project.